We've been sold a very specific idea of what health is supposed to look like. That if you were doing it right, eating well enough, regulating your nervous system well enough, healing enough, you'd feel pretty much the same every day. Same energy, same mood, same motivation. And when that doesn't happen, the conclusion is almost automatic. Something must be wrong. You're out of balance. You missed a step. You need to fix yourself. For a lot of people, that thought quietly turns into something more personal. Why can't I just stay consistent? Why does it feel like I take 2 steps forward and 1 step back? Why does my energy shift when I'm doing everything I'm supposed to be doing? So the response is usually to tighten control, add another habit, track more closely, push through the low days, and hope the steady version of yourself finally arrives and stays. But nothing alive actually works that way. This episode isn't about trying harder or becoming better at managing yourself. It's about understanding something fundamental that often gets overlooked. Living systems don't thrive by staying the same. They thrive by moving, responding, and changing. And when you stop measuring your health against an unrealistic idea of balance, something important shifts. Fluctuation stops looking like failure and starts looking like information. I'm Michelle, and you're listening to Green Earth Essentials. This podcast is a space where we explore holistic wellness through nature's lens, looking at how the body, the nervous system, and the natural world actually function when we stop trying to force them into rigid systems. Here we talk about plant-based nutrition, nervous system care, sustainability, and ancient and modern wisdom that reminds us we're not separate from nature, we're part of it. Green Earth Essentials is about learning how to work with the body instead of constantly correcting it. It's about noticing patterns instead of chasing perfection. And it's about letting the natural world be a teacher, not something we try to override in the name of productivity or optimization. This episode fits right into that larger conversation because the idea of balance sits at the center of so much wellness advice, and it's often doing more harm than good. Today, we're going to look at what happens when we replace the goal of balance with something more biologically honest: rhythm. In this episode, we're going to gently dismantle the idea that balance is something you're supposed to achieve and then maintain indefinitely. By the end of our time together, you'll understand why chasing balance so often leads to frustration, burnout, and self-blame, and why it can actually work against your hormones, your energy levels, and your emotional health instead of supporting them. We'll look at how the body is designed to function in rhythms, not steady states, and how many of the ups and downs you've been taught to fix are actually signs of a system that's responding intelligently to life. And stay with me until the end of this episode when I'll share practical, gentle ways to start working with your natural rhythms daily, seasonally, and emotionally. So wellness stops feeling like something you have to force and starts feeling like something you can cooperate with. When we talk about balance, we're usually talking about something very human, a concept that makes life feel orderly and controllable. But when you actually look at nature, balance isn't the rule, it's the abstraction. Nature moves. There is a day and night, not permanent daylight. There are tides that pull in and recede, seasons that expand, contract, shed, and regenerate, growth followed by decay, and decay that becomes the foundation for new life. Nothing pauses in a perfectly centered state and stays there. Even the healthiest ecosystems depend on motion. Forests don't remain static, they experience storms, fires, periods of overgrowth, and periods of rest. Rivers stay clean because they flow. Stagnant water doesn't create life, it breeds collapse. Resilience in nature doesn't come from holding steady. It comes from the ability to move, adjust, and recover. And that's the key distinction we often miss. Stability sounds safe, but in living systems, stillness is actually a warning sign. Movement is what keeps systems adaptive. Oscillation is what allows them to absorb stress without breaking. When we see nature this way, rhythm stops looking like chaos. It starts looking like intelligence at work. When you bring this idea inside the body, the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Your heart doesn't stay in one steady state, it beats, contracting and releasing in a continuous pattern. That rhythm is life. A heart that stops oscillating isn't balanced, it's in crisis. Your lungs follow the same principle. Inhale, exhale, expansion and release. Breathing depends on movements between states. Holding one position would immediately create distress. This pattern shows up across physiology. The body regulates through dynamic shifts rather than static levels. Activation and recovery alternate. Inputs are followed by adjustment. Systems communicate and recalibrate constantly to maintain internal stability, a process known in biology as homeostasis. Even the nervous system is designed for flexibility. It moves between engagement and rest, alertness and recovery. When this capacity to shift is intact, resilience is possible. In other words, health is not stillness. It is coordinated movement. Recognizing that changes how we interpret fluctuation. Variation inside the body is often evidence that regulation is happening in real time. When we zoom in on hormones and energy, this expectation of constant consistency starts to look unrealistic. Energy rises and falls across the day. Focus sharpens, then fades. Some mornings feel clear and motivated. Others feel slower and more inward. These patterns are influenced by sleep, light exposure, nutrition, stress load, and recovery. Variation is expected, not exceptional. Hormones contribute to these shifts. Cortisol supports wakefulness and stress response. Insulin adjusts to food intake. Reproductive hormones fluctuate across the month and across life stages. These biological patterns influence mood, motivation, appetite, and cognitive clarity. Even when nothing appears outwardly wrong, the issue isn't fluctuation. The issue is the demand for sameness. Modern culture often equates consistency with discipline. Same output, same intensity, same performance every day. When energy dips, the instinct is to override it. Rest becomes something postponed instead of integrated. But when natural rhythms are repeatedly suppressed, the body experiences strain. Stress responses stay active longer than necessary. Sleep quality can decline. Recovery becomes incomplete. What looks like productivity can feel internally like friction. Over time, that friction accumulates. Energy may become less flexible rather than more stable. Burnout, in many cases, isn't a lack of motivation. It's the result of asking a responsive biological system to operate without variation. When we understand this, the goal shifts. Instead of trying to eliminate fluctuations, we learn to work with them, adjusting effort, expectations, and rest in response to what the body is signaling. That shift is where sustainability begins. Beyond hormones and emotions, there's another layer to living rhythmically that often gets overlooked. The signals your body sends before anything hits your awareness. Sometimes it's subtle, a slight tension in your shoulders, a shortness of breath, a heaviness in the mind. Other times it's more obvious, a spike of irritation, sudden fatigue, or a craving for movement or rest. These are not annoyances to push through or problems to correct. They're communications from a system that is constantly monitoring, adjusting, and trying to keep you in flow with life. Think about it like this. A tree doesn't force itself to grow at a perfect rate. It leans towards sunlight. It roots deeper when the soil is dry. It sheds leaves when conditions demand. Your body does something very similar moment by moment. Energy surges are like sunlight, opportunities to create, focus, or connect. Energy dips are like the soil needing rest and replenishment. They invite repair, reflection, and recalibration. Neither is wrong. Both are signals that, if noticed, can guide how you live with less friction. One of the challenges we face is that modern culture rewards ignoring these signals. We have schedules, deadlines, screens, and notifications that demand attention regardless of what the body is saying. Over time, we can become disconnected from the subtle intelligence of our own system. That disconnect can feel like failure, inconsistency, or laziness, but it's really a misalignment. We're treating a responsive system like a rigid machine rather than reading the cues it offers every day. The shift starts with curiosity instead of judgment. Pause and ask, what is my body asking for right now? Where is my energy actually supporting me? And where is it waning? Start small. Notice the times of day when your focus sharpens naturally, or the periods when rest feels restorative rather than indulgent. Journaling these observations can create a map of your own rhythms, a personal guide that helps you respond with awareness instead of force. Over time, this practice deepens self trust. You begin to see that living with rhythms doesn't slow progress, it makes your energy, attention, and creativity more sustainable. The key is noticing, honoring, and moving in conversation with your system, not overriding it. The body doesn't need another habit or rule to follow. It needs acknowledgement, awareness, and permission to flow. That's where consistency shifts from being a measure of discipline to being an emergent property of listening to yourself over time. When you respond to these cycles instead of suppressing them, what emerges is not rigid balance, but a steadier, more resilient rhythm that supports your life in a way no rule or routine ever could. Emotions follow rhythms too, even though we're rarely taught to see them that way. Feelings rise, move, and pass like waves. Joy, grief, irritation, tenderness, frustration, relief. None of these were meant to be permanent states. They're signals, not character flaws. Information moving through the nervous system, responding to what's happening inside you and around you in real time. But many of us have absorbed the idea that being healthy means being emotionally even, calm at all times, regulated in a way that looks smooth, contained, and quiet from the outside. When emotions surge or shift, when sadness appears without a clear reason, or irritation shows up on an otherwise good day, we label it as dysregulation instead of communication. This is where a lot of confusion sets in. Emotional expression gets mistaken for emotional instability. Sensitivity gets confused with weakness, and the natural movement of feeling becomes something to manage, suppress, or override. The nervous system doesn't interpret emotional suppression as safety. It interprets it as vigilance. Holding feelings down takes effort. It tightens the body, shortens the breath, and keeps the system on alert. Over time, that constant bracing can lead to more anxiety, more reactivity, emotional numbness, or sudden overwhelm, not more calm. True regulation isn't emotional flatness, it's flexibility. It's the ability to feel a full range of emotions without getting stuck in them or afraid of them. It's letting activation rise when it needs to and trusting that rest, settling, and resolution will follow. When emotions are allowed to move, the nervous system learns something essential. Change isn't dangerous, and safety, not control, is what allows the body to truly settle and recover. Zooming out from internal rhythms to the natural world, seasonal patterns provide another layer of guidance. Winter is not meant to feel like summer. Shorter days, less light, colder temperatures, all of it signals the body to slow down. Sleep often deepens. Digestion and metabolism shift. Energy turns inward. There's a natural pull toward reflection, conservation, and rest. This isn't a malfunction or a lack of motivation. It's a biological instruction that has guided human bodies for thousands of years. Summer carries a very different rhythm. More daylight, warmer temperatures, and increased social activity support outward energy. Movement feels easier. Creativity and connection often come more naturally. Growth, expansion, and visibility are part of this phase. Spring and fall act as transitions, periods where the body recalibrates, adjusts, and prepares for what's coming next. Those transitional seasons are especially important. They're meant to feel a little destabilizing. Energy can be inconsistent. Emotions may feel closer to the surface. That variability is part of adaptation, not a sign that something is wrong. Modern life, however, largely ignores these cues. Artificial lighting, rigid schedules, and constant productivity expectations flatten the year into one long season. We're expected to show up with the same level of output, focus, and emotional availability no matter what's happening outside or inside our bodies. So, when energy naturally dips in winter or during transitions, we often interpret it as laziness, lack of discipline, or failure instead of wisdom. That misinterpretation creates exhaustion and self judgment layered on top of it. Seasonal living isn't about doing less all the time. It's about doing what fits the moment. It's about letting rest, recalibration, and renewal be part of the cycle instead of something you have to earn back after burnout. When we reconnect with seasonal rhythms, we stop treating our bodies like machines that should run at full capacity year round. We start treating them like ecosystems, responsive, adaptive, and deeply intelligent. Living rhythmically doesn't mean adding another system to manage or another set of rules to follow. It starts with something much simpler: awareness, observing where your energy moves without judgment, paying attention to when it rises and when it dips, when focus feels available, and when your body asks for something quieter, even noticing after the fact, realizing why a day felt heavy or why something felt easy is part of the process. That information is valuable, even if you don't act on it perfectly. You don't need to respond to every signal right away for it to matter. Awareness alone begins to change the relationship between you and your body. When you can, try matching tasks to energy rather than forcing energy to match the task. Some days are better for thinking, planning, or creating. Others are better for maintenance, movement, or rest. This isn't about avoiding effort. It's about placing effort where it's supported. Productivity doesn't disappear when you do this. It often becomes more sustainable and less draining. Honoring recovery is part of the rhythm too. Rest isn't a pause between productive moments. It's an active phase of the cycle where repair, integration, and regulation happen. When rest is treated as essential instead of optional, the body stops having to demand it through exhaustion, shutdown, or overwhelm. And most importantly, let go of the need to control the process. Rhythm isn't something you master, it's something you listen to. It changes over time. What works in one season or one week may shift in the next. That's not failure, that's responsiveness. The goal isn't to get it right every day. It's to stay in conversation with your body instead of working against it. And that shift from control to cooperation is where rhythm becomes healing. If there's one thing to take with you from this episode, it's this: you're not meant to be stable, you're meant to be responsive. Your body, your emotions, your energy, they're designed to move, adjust, and adapt to the world around you. Fluctuation isn't a flaw in the system. It is the system. Just as nature moves through seasons, so too do our energy, emotions, and focus. Learning to flow with these cycles is the essence of responsive living. And when you stop trying to force balance, you make space for something more sustainable: resilience. If this way of thinking resonates with you, I invite you to continue the conversation through my writing on Substack. You'll find deeper reflections, practical insights, and companion pieces to these episodes at substack.com/at Green Earth Essentials. Thank you for spending this time with me and for being willing to question ideas that no longer serve you. Rhythm isn't chaos, it's intelligence. And when you learn to move with it instead of against it, wellness becomes less about fixing yourself and more about listening. This is Michelle Jackson signing off.